There's a famous quote that goes loosely. It goes, "There's no hunting like the hunting of man, and those that have done it long enough wish for nothing more." The flip side of that is being hunted. And what does that mean? You know, and how do you survive and how do you evade? And what is the difference? So today, guys, I'm Dave with Tactical Hyve, and we're going to talk about the differences between evasion and survival and what that really means. Before we get to today's content, this video is brought to you by Vedder Holsters. Vedder Holsters are an American-made company. They have a wide selection. They're great priced. So if you're looking for a new holster, be sure to check them out in the description below. All right, guys, so let's talk about evasion versus survival, right? Most people don't even consider that they're two different things, but they are wildly different depending on what you're doing and where you're doing it. A little back knowledge for you guys on me, like everybody knows, yeah, I spent a long time in Ranger Regiment, and I shot and competed and trained at the Army Marksmanship Unit. Part of my time when I was in Ranger Regiment, I was assigned to the Special Warfare Instruction Center in school there at Camp McCall, North Carolina, as a SERE instructor. So I worked on the evasion detachment for a little over 3 years as a survival, evasion, resistance, and escape instructor. I worked for a little over 3 years there as a SERE instructor, and my primary classes I taught were what I would call Thuggery 301, which was vehicle procurement, defeating restraints, hand-to-hand, and evasion. So that's what I did for 3.5 years. Great time, right? In that, we started talking about, again, survival versus evasion. Take a shelters, for example. You look and do a quick internet search, you'll find survival shelters everywhere, right? And while the shelter remains the same, how to construct the shelter and all that is the same. Survival and evasion, no difference on the shelter. What makes the difference on an evasion side of the house is where and how you're going to utilize that, right? So on survival, obviously you want to be found. Evasion, you do not want to be found. Right? So they're going to have a significant difference on where and how you employ the different techniques for each as you move through that course. We utilize the term called BLISS. You know, the Army's all about acronyms, right? So we use BLISS, BLISS, and it's when applied to a shelter, it's the acronym on how to use it for an evasion situation. BLISS stands for B is blend in, low in height, irregular in shape, small and secluded, right? So you want it to blend in, low to the ground, irregular in shape, small and secluded. You can go deeper into it. Again, like when you're building your shelter, there are certain things you want it to be kind of like if you were establishing a patrol base or something like that. You want it to be off of natural lines of drift, away from key terrain, easily defendable, close to food source or water source as possible. And that's just on your shelter side of the house alone. You start looking at the navigational side of the house. Again, survival versus evasion. Navigation, survival, you're usually looking for key terrain features, key grabbing features, things like that. I'm looking for road stream intersections. I'm looking for road intersections. I'm looking for a prominent defined hilltop. Something that when I find that in the middle of wherever I'm at, and I look at my map, I'm like, yep, I'm very high degree of confidence that this is where I'm standing at right now. You want to do the exact opposite during an evasion, right? Because those key terrain features are also catching features, right? It's if you have an opposing force that you're trying to evade from, it's easy for them to set up and see those key terrains. And if you're doing it the way you're supposed to be doing it, you're getting off the road, you're moving through the natural vegetation, you come popping, they can hear you. That guy sitting on that road intersection can hear you coming a mile away. When I was a SERE instructor, we would start the field portion of the course. We would insert the teams via helicopter and then pretty much tell them, hey, you're screwed, execute your E&E plan, right? And they have a full-blown plan on where they're supposed to go and how they're supposed to do it. And there's things, obviously, we don't want to go into detail on with that. But some of the things you're not supposed to do as a SERE student is walk on the roads, right? So we would set up at key terrain environments as instructors to basically, you know, hold them accountable if they decided they wanted to walk on the road. But what I learned in doing that as an instructor was things I would have never gotten as a student, right? Because I went through the course as a student too, but didn't get it. I could sit on this road right here, and I know that when I hear these dogs barking at about 2 clicks over here, that there's probably someone over there because I know I'm expecting a team come from that direction. And I can look at my watch, and in 15 minutes I hear these dogs barking, and then in 10 minutes I hear these dogs barking, then I know these guys are on the road, right? But if I hear those dogs barking and I don't hear this other one in the middle, they're probably doing the right things. But I can start to take environmental factors that are around me, that I live in this environment, and I can start to apply that on who I'm looking for and where I'm looking for them. That you may not, you won't have that innate knowledge of the environment you're operating in if you're evading. So again, survival, I'm looking to be found. I want to go to that road intersection. I want to, hey, please help me. Evasion, just the opposite. I want to avoid those. So what do you do now? I'm evading and I'm land navving, and I'm not using these key terrain features that I've always used to navigate, right? And of course we're saying in this environment you don't have a GPS or whatever, because GPS obviously is, yeah, of course you know where you're at, right? So this is going worst case scenario. You don't have that electronic crutch, and you're figuring out for yourself. So now I'm using streams, I'm using terrain, but I'm not using key terrain. Keeping my last known location on my map and doing frequent map checks in the direction that I'm moving becomes a lot more paramount now than it does if I'm moving for time and distance on a survival styled land nav course, or a land nav course that really has no real consequences if I'm found. So instead of going down this deep rabbit hole of land nav and evasion versus survival and all that, right? Let's get back to why are we doing this, right? Why are we even having this discussion of survival and evasion? And like we said in the beginning of the video, it's commonly misunderstood, or it's commonplace to think the two are the same, right? And they're wildly different. So if you find yourself in that survival situation, you find yourself in that evasion situation, there is a sequence of events that cause you to be in a significant emotional upheaval, right? It could be a lot of different things for sure, and we're not trying to nail it down to one, but understanding why you're here and what your end state is. Survival is to get found, right? Is to live and get found. And evasion, still to live, right? And honestly, it's still to get found, but it's to get found by the right people. There's people you're trying not to be found by. And the difference is in between the two. Take, for example, like I said, we talked about shelters, right? And the acronym BLISS, and utilizing it for an evasion perspective. Now think about signaling devices. I want to throw a signal if I'm evading in certain places I don't want to signal. If I'm in a spot where I think I can reach friendly forces, or I can reach partisans or someone like that who can assist me in my evasion, yeah, I want a signal. But again, I don't want to spend these big, gigantic, overt signals for everybody who may be chasing me down. Smoke signals, water chemical signals, the list goes on and on and on. There are some things in the survival evasion that are going to remain the same no matter what. Water. Water's your need to drink water is going to remain the same. How you purify that water may make a huge difference, right? So survival situation, you're out there and you find a good source of water, but you need to clarify it so you can boil it. Boiling it is going to help you survival anyway. It's going to give you something to cook with, something to heat with. It's going to give you overt signals to help be identified by rescue parties and rescue forces. As we're evasion, just the opposite. Starting a fire may not be ideal for you where you're at. So you may either have to package your water up and move it to a place or a location that's more conducive to you purifying it later, or it's wildly unpopular, but you may have to make that choice whether you're going to die or whether you're going to live. Do I take the chance of having giardia or some type of ailment that's going to cause me to actually lose more water and dehydrate me? Or if I don't drink water, I'm going to die. Those are choices each person has to make in those environments. All right, so when we're talking about our water purification processes and whether we're surviving or whether we're evading, because that's going to make a significant difference on how I do it and when I do it, that goes back into food and how you're going to prep your food with your fire, without your fire. The one key universal thing you need to do going into this is be prepared. The time to learn to survive, the time to learn to evade is not when you're doing it, when you're actively thrust in the middle of now what, right? So just by watching this video ahead of time means that you have an inclination, you want to know more about it, but that's where it starts. Start learning your plants. And it's impossible to learn them all, right? Even as a SERE instructor, I had 4 different volumes of books. Really, I would take the flight. They make these little flight books, right? They're a plastic laminated sheet you can slide into. They're very common. But we would use those as our plant identification books. And I had 4 of them. They're for North Carolina, but there was one for every season because certain plants come in certain seasons and you need to know those things, especially if you're the instructor walking students saying, hey, you can eat this. Oh, by the way, don't eat that. Or if you eat this because that'll help you puke, right? But the point of that is learn it now, study that stuff. There's a wealth of information and resources out there. And if you understand survival, that's the 90% crux of it. If you got that piece figured out, the evasion portion of it is much easier to tackle onto it. So if you like this stuff, and I would assume if you've looked at the video this long already and haven't turned it off, that you probably do, then like, comment, and subscribe. And if you have information or you have things you'd like to say, reference this topic, by all means, please let us know. But thanks guys for your time.